Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. We're coming to you on Wednesday night, February 11th, to react to the latest news surrounding the Orioles rotation, which is that they have agreed to a contract with right-handed pitcher Chris Bassett. We're also going to get into the injury news surrounding Jackson Holliday, Jordan Westburg, and Connor Selby, as well as the non-roster invitees for this spring. But first, as we like to do at the top of every episode, we're going to welcome some new members to our Patreon community. And for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, as always, you can, well, not as always, this is new. You can click the bottom here to join our Patreon, but I'd like to shout out a few guys and gals I'm going to tell you who signed up in the last week. I would like to thank Justin Nolt for signing up at the AA level. Thank you so much. We have TQ who signed up for a month of the single A level. Thank you. Alan Graham signed up at the AA level. Cedric, you did the free week trial, which, hey, all respect to you for that. Hope you appreciate it and come back if you enjoyed it at all. And thank you to Darren Wagner as well, who also signed up at the single A level.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, we are in the midst of our top 50 countdown over at Patreon. We're actually getting into the top 10 now, so if you sign up today, you have a chance to access not only the top 10 of our Patreon top 50 countdown, but also the previous episodes we've released over the last month and a half or so. So be sure to check that out. Now, big news that broke Wednesday night, right before we hopped on the air here, and in fact, we really have not had a lot of time to react to it ourselves, is that the Orioles have an agreement with right-handed starter Chris Bassett on a one-year, $18.5 million deal. This move first reported by Jeff Passan at ESPN. Bassett, who will turn 37 in 11 days, has been, if nothing else, durable over the last four seasons, throwing 170 innings at least in each of the last four seasons. With the numbers that we saw last year, a 3.96 ERA and a 4.16 FIP with the Blue Jays, pretty representative of the production you can expect from Bassett. However, we also know that this is a pitcher with a fairly limited ceiling and does not really fit the definition of a top-of-the-rotation arm the way that a Framber Valdez or perhaps a Zach Gallen would have. Now, we have to guess at this point that maybe the Orioles' rotation moves are done. There's no confirmation that is the case, but considering they signed Zach Eflin earlier in the offseason and also traded for Shane Baz, it would seem that with Bassett in the fold, they have their five-man rotation set going into the 2026 season. So, Nick, I'll start with you here. What are your thoughts on this move?
First of all, I almost dropped the stream. We got to get used to this new layout we got here behind the scenes. So if I drop off or do something crazy, that's why. Yeah, I don't know. I think from the vibes this morning and just the boys back in camp, baseball starting back up, it's hard to be like annoyed by this move. I think it's perfectly fine. I don't really have any issue with it at all. I'm sure there are a lot who hate this move and complaining because it's not the top of the rotation arm. But it's not sexy at all. It's a 1 year deal. Yes, he turns 37 later this month, actually, I think. Yet the fastball velo is declining year over year for a couple of years now. It's 91 and a half now. And he's not the top of the rotation arm. They didn't bring that in this offseason. That was a failure. I don't think many people would disagree with that, but it's a 1 year extra padding for this rotation. You push Cade Povich down even more. You push Brandon Young down even more. They're still here in AAA as really good depth arms down there. And in case the pitchers drop like flies again, like they did last year. But a lot of the other guys are we want to see some of these top prospects in AAA, but they've thrown 0 innings in the big leagues. You bring in Chris Bassett, and like you said, he's about as reliable as you can get over these last few years. 181, 200, 171, 170. Those are his innings each of the last 4 years. F4, 2.8, 2.6, 2.3, 2.4. Strikeout rate is between 22 and 23% each year the last 4 years. 7.5% walk rate each year. I'm not going to sit here and be mad that the top 6 arms the Orioles have in camp now are much better than last year's group. And he spent the last 3 years in Toronto, so he knows these AL East ballparks, the lineups, and he's put up those consistent numbers pitching against that competition. And I know you're facing your AL East foes less now. I get that, but I'm not over the moon about the signing, but I think the roster as a whole is better tonight than it was this morning. And 1 year of Chris Bassett or a longer, fatter contract plus a draft pick for Zach Gallen, I'll take the 1 year for Chris Bassett. And you still have the option to trade for a better arm is still there this year.
Yeah, I do want to thank the Orioles for signing Chris Bassett, or at least leaking it out that he's signing here 20, 30 minutes before we go live on our normally scheduled time. That was nice. Is it exciting? No. But what was going to be exciting at this point other than like a Tarek Skubal trade, which was admittedly a pipe dream, but it's especially once we'll talk about later Jordan Westburg. I mean, I've been trying to trade him to Detroit for Skubal all offseason. Just not going to happen. But yeah, Chris Bassett, I mean, we saw Justin Verlander's name floated out there for a while. Yeah, Zach Allen, I was starting to convince myself that a 2 or 3 year deal for Zach Allen wouldn't be too bad if you think you can get him to be more like the second half pitcher of 2025 than the first. But yeah, that draft pick, it's not the end of the world. And I think the team would have been willing to do it for Ranger Suarez or Michael King, maybe a few others. But Chris Bassett is not that much worse than a Zach Gallen type. Yeah, he'll probably give you, like, if you look at his oopsie projections, 1.9 WAR, low fours ERA, he's going to be able to give you, 150 to 170 innings. He's almost like an older, he was probably better than Dean Kramer in his prime, but at this point, he's probably just like an older veteran version of Dean Kramer. Looks like his sinker has a 101 stuff plus. His slider's got a 107. His cutter, curveball, 95. Four seamer, not so good. So he's got like a 96 overall stuff plus, 101 location plus. I don't know. Like even his xFIP, expected ERA, it's all in the threes to low fours for the past couple years. So yeah, I think he's going to be kind of like Zach Eflin, except maybe less risky because you know what he's going to give you for the most part. Whereas Eflin, he had the poor performance, probably most likely due to the back injury, which hopefully is taken care of now. And seems like he's having a normal spring, which was good to hear this morning as well. We'll talk about it obviously, but the injury news, I think, besides the top line guys, I think especially on the pitching front, looks good so far. Knock on wood. So yeah, I'm happy to have Chris Bassett in here. I'm not doing backflips, jumping jacks. I'm not celebrating the signing, but I think it doesn't make us worse. That's for sure. Depth is certainly a good thing. We learned that last year.
Yeah, I think you have to acknowledge the basic idea that the signing probably helps from the bottom of the rotation dropping out the way it did at the beginning of last year. Because, let's face it, the Orioles season in 2025 is basically spoiled by 2 really bad months. And if there had been a Chris Bassett in the Orioles rotation for the first 2 months of last year, it would not have gone as poorly as it did. Now, you could look at Chris Bassett and compare it to Charlie Morton from a year ago, except that Bassett's a few years younger than Morton was. And I think given where Morton was in his career at the time he signed that contract, that's pretty significant. A few years younger, coming off of success within this division. So I do think that helps. And like you both said, this rotation is better than it was this morning. I think that it helps a lot to know that not only do you have to count on Zach Eflin to be ready to go on opening day, but you don't have to count on Tyler Wells to be in the rotation. Now, we know that Wells has been good at points in the rotation over the course of his career, but the Orioles bullpen looks a lot better when you can pencil Tyler Wells into any spot in there, knowing he's going to be able to pick up innings and not have to bounce back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen, which is what this allows for. And there's a larger discussion about the rest of the rotation that I'll get into in a minute, but I think we have to acknowledge that at this point, the alternatives are not a lot better. And you can pick that apart any way you want. Maybe the front office wasn't aggressive enough. Maybe there was some reason Framber Valdez didn't want to sign in Baltimore. But the bottom line is that if you're looking at Zach Gallen or Chris Bassett or having to pull off a trade with a Twins team that does not seem eager at all to move Joe Ryan, this isn't the worst possible outcome.
And those teams are going to fall off. The Twins are going to realize just how bad things are going to get pretty soon, and those arms will likely become available, and others as well. We'll see what happens with the Marlins, although I don't despise the Marlins' chances this year. So those arms will become available at some point, and the Orioles they've clearly been in conversation with many teams and pretty active on that trade market, so they can resume those conversations again when everybody's in a different spot. With the Bassett thing too, it's just like, I don't know, it is a little similar to the Charlie Morton thing. I get that, but yeah, Charlie Morton was basically on his way out the door, and Bassett very clearly, even if this is going to be his last year, or he's got 2 years left, I don't think he's planning to retire. I don't think he ever came out and said anything like that. So he's determined to come back out for at least another year or more. And like, this is a guy, yeah, the velo's not there. Bob read off the Stuff Plus numbers. Maybe some of them aren't great with some of the pitches, but I mean, he's got what, 7, 8 pitches? Like, he uses that full kitchen sink. This guy's been doing it since what, 2014, 2015. I like bringing this arm in, and hopefully he knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly where he's at. He knows exactly what his role is going to be. Hopefully, we don't know what type of person he is, and necessarily he's going to come in and be a leader among that rotation, but maybe he can be a huge asset to some of these younger arms. Like, Bradish, we hope Bradish can take that step forward. Bassett hopefully can help him. He can help guys like Povich and some of these prospects who are going to be in camp. He's been doing this for a long time. Could he help? I think Adley's in a pretty good place as far as like calling games and everything, but like Samuel Basayo, could he help bring up Basayo and his catching abilities behind in calling games and everything like that? It could have a nice ripple effect as well, but yeah, it's just, I think it's fortifying the rotation. So I'm not going to be mad at all about that.
Yeah, it's not the top of the rotation starter that us and the team themselves wanted to get. Obviously, I think Ranger Suarez was the top of that list. Didn't happen. Thanks a lot, Boston. But if you can't improve the top of the rotation, which I think they did to an extent, at least the middle, I think that Shane Baz trade. Craig Albernez said that Shane Baz, his ceiling is an ace. I agree with that. Between him, Bradish, and Rogers, I think you have some real upside. And of course, Rogers as well could probably come back down to earth a little bit after the fantastic season he had last year. But if you can't fortify the top of the rotation, why not fortify the back of the rotation? And yeah, I understand the argument that maybe depth was not exactly what we were missing or what we were needing the most, especially with the Cade Povich, the Brandon Youngs, all the guys at AAA, Albert Suarez, Tyler Wells. But again, I think this is a front office that maybe overcorrects, but is learning from the mistakes of the previous year. And I don't think having a veteran that can put up some innings, which we might just need at the end of the day, I don't think it's hurting anything. Raise the floor a little bit, just like we used to say about the farm system. But yeah, I don't see a reason to hate it. I also don't see a reason to absolutely love it either.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking at the rotation now, or you're trying to compare your projection for the team coming into today as compared to right now after the Orioles signed Bassitt, it's probably not that significant, but I do think that there is an advantage to being able to bump Povich and Young down to AAA as long as you've got 5 healthy, proven starters coming out of the gate in spring training. I do want to bring up this point, though, which is that you have Kyle Bradish coming back from Tommy John surgery. He looked great at the end of last year. Trevor Rogers was obviously dominant, and we've heard all offseason about how much better Shane Baz could be, and the fact that the Orioles are going to have him in-house for the next 3 years, and they're going to be able to hopefully tap into that potential that he has shown, and that honestly we saw a lot of flashes of when the Rays were on the road last year. With that said, we also know that not having that proven top of the rotation arm is going to put a lot more pressure on those 3 guys to produce. And if we want to look at the short term of it, Chris Bassett is not the Orioles opening day starter. It's probably going to be Bradish or Rogers. If we're looking a little bit further out, if we had to look at ceiling, in the playoffs, if the Orioles don't make any distance between now and then, and hopefully they're in the hunt for a playoff spot, Bassitt is probably not the guy you want as your game one or game two starter. So we have to acknowledge this does put a lot of pressure on the guys that are in-house now, particularly Bradis, Rogers, and Boz. What do you think about their ability to handle that pressure?
I just think people continue to criminally underrate Kyle Bradish and the impact he can have as like a top of the rotation arm. Like, I mean, it's the Shane Baz thing. I love the deal. I'm I'm not over the moon about Shane Baz. I'd probably be the lowest guy on Shane Baz, but I'm very excited to see what he can do. I'm certainly coming around on it. The Craig Albernaz, I love the quote. I love the optimism. He's a guy like I need to see it first here in Baltimore, but I acknowledge, yeah, that season is incredible. That his ceiling is incredibly high, and I don't think. I feel like every time people talk about Cobb Radish, it's like the innings limit, the innings limit. Why would you limit his innings? I mean, I know it's been 2 years, but he showed last year how dominant he was when he came back. I think that's malpractice. If you're saying that maybe you take him on an inning early here, an inning early there. Maybe if you, I don't know, maybe if you skip a start closer to a break, give him an extended break closer to the deadline or whatever. But I just don't see them limiting any of these guys having real hard innings caps. So I'm pretty not over the moon with the entire rotation, but it's just so much better than last year. You can't be upset.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the innings limit thing is definitely overstated right now because yeah, Bradish he responded well from the surgery. He made it all the way back. His stuff was as good, if not better, than ever. I think he's got a full workload. Maybe you give him a little bit of rest around that All-Star break time, like they do with some players. Shane Baz just came back and had one of the most innings in the AL last year. He should be fine. Trevor Rogers, he missed a month. I don't think he's really going to be limited at all. Kramer, workhorse. Bassitt, workhorse. Eflin, sixth starter. I am curious what they do if everybody is healthy. Like, will Bassitt start in the bullpen if everyone's healthy? Will they do a six-man rotation? Obviously, these are good problems to have if that ends up being the case. Rather have that issue than the opposite that we had last year. So, and what happens with Povich? Does he continue to get starts in AAA, or do they say, "Hey, we need a lefty in the bullpen. Let's turn him loose, see what he can do from there"? And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with a lot of arms and obviously only 13 spots.
And this is a larger discussion we'll probably have before the end of spring training, but I don't hate the idea of a six-man rotation, at least for the first couple of months. Just see what you have and try to help some of these starters that are coming back from injuries build up their workloads a little bit. And then to go over the point that Nick just made about Bradis, I agree. I think that what you'll see from Bradis is maybe what we saw at the end of last season, the beginning, where he'll have a few starts where he's coasting through 4 or 5, but the walks might be a little bit higher, the pitch count might be a little bit high. So you pull him out to err on the side of caution. But the expectation is that as you get further into the season, you're not pulling him that much. And I think that in some of the things that Michael Elias has said this offseason, it's pretty clear that we're not heading towards a scenario where the Orioles are in playoff contention in late August, early September, and it's like, oh, Kyle Bradis is at 150 innings. Time to pull him. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and like Garrett said in the chat, I mean, even Jacob deGrom missed her injury himself. Like, he got a full workload coming off of how many seasons in a row of barely pitching. So, yeah, I think at this point, when you're an established veteran, if you can pitch, you're going to pitch. And obviously there's little things they can do, but at the end of the day, arms are going to break. So might as well use them while you got them.
We'll go over now to some injury news that was announced on Wednesday by Michael Elias. And let's start with the biggest news to come out of that, which is that second baseman Jackson Holliday is going to open the 2026 season on the IL after suffering a fractured hamate bone in his right hand during live batting practice on February 6th. It's likely that Holliday is going to miss the first several weeks of the season. Meanwhile, Jordan Westburg, currently dealing with an oblique injury, which he suffered 3 weeks ago, but at this point, he's only expected to miss the first few weeks of spring training. And then in other news, Colin Selby, right-handed reliever, is dealing with inflammation in his right shoulder and is expected to begin the season on the IL. Now, Selby was not a pitcher that we were necessarily counting on to make the opening day roster, although especially after the Cade Stroud trade, he would have seemed like a guy that could have been in competition for a bullpen spot. Westburg, we know the implications of that. If he's healthy on opening day, he's going to be the Orioles' third baseman, or at least be somewhere in their infield. And then let's go over to Holliday now, who we know is going to open this season on the IL with the hand injury. The Orioles' move to bring in Blaze Alexander actually occurred before this injury happened, but in hindsight, it does seem like it will help them out a little bit more now to know they have at least one player that can go out and play second base a few days a week and play the position reliably defensively. But I think we know that for Holliday, we were hoping that coming into this year, he could get a full healthy slate and really break out. And maybe we get that at some point this year, but it's not going to be right away. So what are your reactions to these injuries, starting with Bob?
Well, it's never great. But last year, we obviously had all the injuries, not just pitchers, but position players all throughout the year. So it's not exactly the way you want to start things off. But I do think that, obviously, I think they went out and got Blaze Alexander first and foremost just because they like Blaze Alexander and what he can do to fill in all over the field. But they obviously knew about Jordan Westberg's oblique injury. I think they said it happened like 3 weeks ago, maybe. So they went out and got Alexander, who can play great defense, third base, second base, seems to be learning the outfield pretty well. And then you could also have Kobe Mayo, who's been working out at third base, we heard today. So, if Westberg has to miss time, you got some options there. And then, yeah, Holliday goes out, breaks his hand. It seems like everybody's doing it. So only the good players, Corbin Carroll, Francisco Lindor, Jackson Holliday, might as well sign up, get that removed, get it out of the way. 6 to 8 week timeline. Sounds like he could probably be back middle to end of April, early May at the latest. So, yeah, Blaze Alexander, get the second base glove out and get practicing there. I think maybe between him and if Westberg's healthy, he could play some second base as well with Mayo at third. Peyton Eales, 5'5" Peyton Eales getting up against 6'8" Keegan Gillis today at batting practice. Maybe there's a little bit of a platoon there, righty-lefty platoon. I don't know if they would do that or if Peyton Eales even has a chance to make the team, but it's an option. The only thing that worries me is, look, a hamate bone, broken bone, you get the surgery, you get it fixed, you come back, and you're probably fine. The oblique, soft tissue injury, please make sure you're fully healthy before you come back, Jordan. Let's not try to Austin Hayes this thing and fight through it and have poor performance potentially or aggravate something else. Make sure you got your bed down in Sarasota, get the right mattress and be well rested. Yeah, that's the only thing that worries me. But then Andy Koska tweeted out a video of Westburg doing sprint drills. So obviously the oblique can't be that bad right now. So that is encouraging. Hopefully he misses the minimal amount of time and can come back. But yeah, Holliday, I was super high on a bounce back or breakout season for him. And I still am. I don't think this really changes much. I know sometimes that the power can be a little bit longer coming back after a broken hamate bone, but that's not exactly the biggest part of his game anyway. So I fully expect him by May 1st to be up and running, kind of like Gunnar Henderson last year.
Yeah, you had all that time there for a while where I feel like high school kids preemptively having Tommy John surgery. High school kids, go ahead and have your preemptive hamate bone surgery. Just go ahead and get that knocked out ahead of time. This is ridiculous that just the volume of that injury right here within the last 2 days. But the Westbrook thing actually concerns me more because this is just his resume of injuries is extensive and it's getting pretty annoying at this point. It just seems like that's something that's never going to go away with him. And You go back to the conversation we had at the end of the year. Like we were doing awards, which was an odd episode after watching what we watched last year to hand out awards. But at the same time, like I brought up the point, like statistically not the MVO, but things just feel different when Westburg is in that lineup. Like he was a catalyst for that team last year. Maybe he's not an outward like vocal leader in the clubhouse, but it seems like he's a lead by example guy. And when he's not on the field, I feel like you could feel that impact, and he's still having that issue of staying on the field. But yeah, hopefully that's good by opening day and he can get some run in spring training. That's the thing with Holliday is like, yeah, maybe he gets the surgery and he's fine. You hear other teams talking about, Lindor and Corbin Carroll. I think Lindor, like maybe some hope right after opening day. And it's like, that's good. He could not miss a ton of time, but you are worried about what the power is going to look like when he returns. And for me, the bigger thing is maybe not so much the power, because like you said, this isn't going to be a guy who you're relying on, 25, 30 home runs a year, but he's still a very young player. He's not Lindor. He's not Corbin Carroll. He can't just pick up a bat and go. I think that spring training is like critical for him to have that runway into the regular season, and he doesn't get that now. And like that for a young player like Holliday, who yes, he took a step forward last year. Debate about how big of a step forward he took, but like we need to see a lot more from Holliday. And I think there are a few things we can also debate about what his ultimate ceiling is, but like clearly there are some things that we could see improvements on in 2026 that could help take his game and this lineup to another level. I'm worried about not having a spring training, how long that's going to continue to impact him.
Yeah, I feel like. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
He froze at a great
spot.
Okay,
he froze. Okay. So I was going to say that, I worry about that, especially in light of Gunnar Henderson last year, where, first you're thinking when he comes back, okay, he missed, a good portion of spring training, but he had a couple of weeks of a rehab assignment. He was able to get back out there relatively early. He should be fine. And some of Gunner's struggles early on were tied to the fact that the Orioles faced a lot of left-handed pitching in the first 3 weeks or so that he was back. But Holliday, like you said, Nick, is not that proven of a player. And we hope that there's still a breakout somewhere in 2026. But this certainly could set the timetable back.
Yeah, I hope somebody got a screenshot of Bob's frozen face like that, first and foremost. But, yeah, like that's just the only thing that worries me. And it's also comforting to go back to Gunnar that, it seemed like the shoulder issue that he was also had an impact, continued for a little bit longer. So, yeah, I don't know. Today was, I feel like I felt great after today. And a lot of that is seeing like mitts popping and bats cracking on the timeline all day. But on the injury front, it's like if Holliday is the biggest injury and he should be back fairly soon at the beginning of the year, like you feel really, really good. There is no major pitching injuries. And then they added Chris Bassett. So fantastic. And yeah, just, I don't know how much more we can talk about Holliday, but yeah, with the Selby thing and some other things that Elias touched on today, the last 48 hours, the Selby thing for me, I don't think we really talked about Selby when we looked at the bullpen the other week, but to me, he just felt like a guy that's like, if I'm making a 26-man roster, even if he's healthy right now, I don't know if he's on that 26-man roster, but he's also not a guy who I would love to see just like walk away or get claimed when they try to DFA him. At least with his injury, you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but if someone's going to get hurt, you kick that decision down the road a little bit. He can go down in AAA and rehab, and you kick it down the road. And hopefully at some point, if you need him when he comes back, great. And if not, you try to slip him through waivers then and hope he remains in AAA until you do need him. But yeah, for Colin Selby to be the only pride of Randolph-Macon, love you, Colin. We've seen the flashes of what you can do. We also know his struggles and his issues. For that to be the major injury news on the pitching front, this is a great last 24 hours or so.
Yeah, I don't know. All I see is someone screenshot that I got froze. Hopefully it wasn't something too embarrassing. But I was just going to say about Holliday that he's not gunner either. You can't just say rush him back as soon as possible for opening day and let him get loose and get acclimated during the season. I think he's going to probably need a full rehab stint as well. So maybe May 1st would be a nice goal for him. But yeah, I completely agree with Selby. The silver lining there is definitely there that he can go and make the most of the injury rehab, and maybe by the time he's ready, there's going to be space for him to get one more chance before you most likely DFA at some point. But yeah, time will tell.
That is a good transition to this next discussion that we're going to have, which is about the non-roster invitees in camp this spring. Now, we have a total of 11 players on our initial top 50, and I'm not going to give away the rankings just yet because that hasn't been released to the public. And in fact, our patrons don't know our full rankings yet. But there's 11 players total in camp as non-roster invitees that are part of our top 50. And as is usual with any non-roster invitee slate on any team, there's any number of pitchers that could make a statement this spring, whether it's a guy like a Trey Gibson or Nestor Human, who's not necessarily going to be on the opening day roster, but could get a look later on, or some guys that we're going to talk about here in this segment maybe could get a look a little bit sooner than that, but across the board, a pretty interesting group. And I'll just run down some of the highlights here. Among the pitchers, you have Luis De Leon, Trey Gibson, Nestor Herman, Levi Wells, Cameron Weston. And then over in our catchers, you got Creed Willems, Silas Ardway, Ethan Anderson. Infielders, Peyton Neals, a guy that we just talked about, could be competing for a spot in camp with Holliday being out now. And then in the outfield, Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Judd Fabian, among a few others. So an interesting slate this year. And Nick, I'll start with you. You wrote about it over our Substack. What are your thoughts on this group?
The veteran types, I don't know. I feel like every year when we talk about these guys, you can pick one and be like, I think this could be the guy that has like the big breakout and maybe makes a statement and maybe fights for a roster spot. I don't think I see that this year. It's definitely like a lot of the pitchers, at least, like you're gonna see hopefully most, if not all, these guys down in AAA. I love the depth of some of these arms, and there's some guys like Enoli Paredes and some others that have Hans Kraus that have MLB time. So like that's good to see. I'm interested to see some of those guys, some of those arms. Eric Torres, just unbelievable stat line between indie ball and then the Puerto Rican Winter League. I know the level of competition there, but still, I think he had the indie ball 64 strikeouts in 39 innings with a 1.59 ERA, and then he pitched 23 innings in the Puerto Rican Winter League and gave up 0 runs with 39 strikeouts and 7 walks. So I'm interested to see some of these new guys pitch late in spring training games. But like on the prospect side, this is a pretty fun group. I'm interested to see how much run some of these guys get, especially on the pitching side. Because like Luis De Leon, we know the velo's there, we know the stuff is good, but what does the command look like? Still mind blowing that he pitched 87 innings last year across 3 levels and did not give up a home run. But like, what does that command look like in spring? Nestor Herman, for me, it's what does the fastball velo look like? You know, he was sub 93 miles per hour when he got to AAA last year, and that pitch had just a 15% whiff rate, so it got hit around pretty hard and a lot. So what does his fastball velo look like in spring? Trey Gibson and Levi Wells, kind of the same thing with those guys. They've had all off season to prepare with the MLB ball and get used to that again. And they both reached AAA when they had already exceeded or matched their career high in innings. So how do they look like? Refreshed and ready to go for 2026. And I think the two prospect bats who could see major league time, I mean, shout out Aaron Estrada, of course. You love to see that, him get some playing time, and Peyton Neals. But like as far as like MLB playing time in 2026, Enrique Bradfield Jr. and Judd Fabian, it's like I think we all want to see the batted ball data. What does that look like for Bradfield? Across the full, I know every single one of his at bats is going to be heavily scrutinized. It's the way it is. It's fair. But hopefully the whole body of work is positive in spring. And with Fabian, like I said the other week when we dove into him a little bit more, I said I was pretty much done. But when you look at some of those key metrics, the rolling average, he had real craters right after the birth of his child, and then right after he had the wrist injury, and they never rebounded after the wrist injury. But he had stretches there where the whiff, the strikeouts, the WOBA, all of that was like in palatable ranges given his profile, given his role, expected role in the big leagues. It was palatable. So like, can he show that in spring when he gets some run this time? So prospect wise, it is a very fun group that everybody's going to get to see. And we get StatCast data for every single game this year. Can't hide from us anymore, Orioles.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that first thing. Shout out to TJ Stats who tweeted that out. That sources say all 30 spring parks will have Statcast data. That is very nice to hear. Used to have to rely on the road games there. But yeah, I completely agree. It seems like Eric Torres was the big new guy in town. Everyone was talking about Andy Koska talking about how he looked pretty filthy from the left side. As my camera goes out, he's got like a sidearm delivery with 90 to 92 miles per hour, but the angle and extension, and yeah, his stat line was crazy last year, so it should be fun to watch him pitch. But just the prospects that were invited: De Leon, Gibson, Herman, Levi Wells, and Cameron Weston. Those five alone, I think I'll be paying a lot of attention to. It'll be nice to see Big Christmas, see if the Orioles can do anything interesting with Jackenzie Noel and his swing. Maybe get him to swing and miss a little less often. That seems to be the type of player the Orioles love to mess around with and try to get into a more hit tool laden thing. I don't know what I'm even trying to say here. I will be excited to watch Aaron Estrada, see how hard can he hit the ball. A few months after the last season ended, I know there were reports that he hit a ball 112 in Double A last year. So let's see what he can do. Yeah, there's a lot on the position player side. It's like nobody that's really gonna make a run to make the roster, but it'll at least be fun to watch in the games, which we'll get to see plenty of this year with 20 Masson produced broadcasts as well as the away games. Yeah, it's going to be we're going to get more looks and data than ever this year. That's exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting to see them on television more, and the fact that they're going to have more games on Statcast. I think that if you want to look at the prospects that can gain a lot from this time, I really think that it's Creed Williams and Ethan Anderson, because every spring it feels like you hear about how the catchers did with more veteran starters, or how they did logging innings behind the plate with older pitchers. And with Anderson and Williams, we know that there are question marks about whether or not both of those guys can stick behind the plate. And in the case of Williams, I have to think that he's going to be going out there fighting for a AAA roster spot. If they could both put up not so much good springs at the plate, but good springs behind the plate, where you're hearing a lot of positive feedback from the pitchers that work with them as well as the Orioles coaching staff, I think that's going to do wonders for them. And then one guy that I've kind of got my eye on, because Nick wrote about him over the offseason, is Andrew Magno, a left-handed pitcher which signed out of the Tigers system earlier this offseason. Now, he is somebody that's a little bit older, a pick out of Ohio State in 2019, but good numbers last year in Double A. 2.31 ERA was a 27.7% strikeout rate, 184 average against. This feels like the kind of guy that's going to start the year in Norfolk's bullpen, but could be a fun under-the-radar candidate to get big league innings once we get into the season.
Yeah, on the minor league side, I love that minor league pickup there, because he'll also strike you out and then tell you exactly where to go sit down after he strikes you out, which you guys know I love the little flash on the mound from these guys. Yeah, and he also admitted, like, he went to AAA and he did struggle in 2025 in AAA, and he admitted it was kind of like preparation. He didn't feel confident out there on the mound in his preparation routine, so I think he learned from that. But yeah, older arm. It's some of these new guys. It's good to see like fresh blood, and to see like, okay, who could be, as far as like the relief arms go, who can be like reliable depth at this point. Because yeah, like I said, I don't know if any of the NRIs are gonna really battle for a roster spot, especially you add Chris Bassett, and now who knows if they're done with the bullpen? They could bring in more arms. By late in spring too, they're going to, when everybody's trying to sneak guys through the waiver wire, the Orioles are going to be scouring that. They're going to try to find another little hidden gem among that group. Someone good, a couple guys that are probably worthy of 26-man spot are going to get pushed out just due to roster restrictions with some guys. But yeah, we'll see what happens with this group. We're only a couple days away now from actually being able to watch these guys on TV in an Orioles uniform. So I can't wait anymore. Today was a nice little tease, but it was just like leave you hanging here at the end of the night.
I know that's the thing. Like, wait for some night games. There's daily games going. You get used to the pre and post conference. Yeah, it was just a little bit of a taste today, and probably for the next week or so. But get that WBC going this year too. That'll be a nice little influx of baseball soon. We got to enjoy everything we can this year with the the CBA conversations that we'll be having at the end of the season.
Can I just say, the WBC, I love it. I can't wait to watch it. I will be tuned in, but it scares the crap out of me with these Orioles guys. I'm like, we send no Orioles? I want to see Gunnar with USA across his chest hitting bombs, but every time he's up there, I'm going to be scared. But luckily, other than Dean, are there any other There are no other pitchers, right? Except I know
Ryan
Dean's
Long.
pitch. Ryan, okay. Major league pitchers. I think we're good. Yeah, at least we only have one pitcher going, so calms the nerves a little bit more. But yeah.
Hey, Dean struck out a bunch of guys with the splitter today. I think we're cooking already. Yeah. Spring training is fun, even if it's just you'll get a few quotes in a day for the next week before the games start. It's just nice to be actually back in baseball season, and the off season is officially over. I love it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we're going to have a lot next week. So we're going to get into our spring training predictions. And that's going to be actually the last episode before we drop the top 50 out on our main feed. And that's always one of our favorite episodes of the year. That's coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to have a lot going on then with our spring training predictions and a whole lot more. So be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels. Have access to the remainder of our countdown, as well as the episodes that have appeared up to this point. And then once we get into the regular season, there's a whole lot more bonus coverage over there, including weekly updates from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50. And before we go, we got one special announcement that we're very excited about. On March 29th, we'll be joining teams with Connor Newcomb over at Locked On Orioles to deliver a live pregame show at Checker Spot Brewing, our favorite brewery in Baltimore, and the sponsor of our Last Call segment. They will be back this year, and we will be back there on March 29th for a live show that begins at 12:30 before the Orioles 1:35 game that day. Be sure to stay tuned to this show as well as Connor's show for more details about that over the next month or so. Before we wrap up, Bob, any thoughts about that?
That was muted.
Yep,
There
I
you
was just trying to figure out how to, the new system in the background that we've been talking about. Just trying to, and it still is not. There it is. Okay, yeah. There's the nice little poster that Connor's wife had made. Looks really good. Very excited about it. Yeah, it'll be that opening weekend. We'll be firing on all cylinders. And we might even figure out how to live stream the live show by then. So that would be nice too. So please make it out if you can. It'll be a good time. We'll do a little podcasting before the game, and then we'll hang out and watch the game with you guys at the Checker Spot. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Be sure to check that out. And if you're watching live on YouTube, you can see that very nice graphic promoting the show. And if you go into Checker Spot over the next few weeks, you'll probably see that posted on the wall there as well. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens and Zach Spedden, you've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.